But how do we know, Rachel, that that information is not biased? I'm sure, Rachel, you must have worked with a lot of universities. And have you seen in universities how AI these days are integrated into the higher education system? Maybe.
There's such great examples going on at the moment. So one of the things that I do, this is not a great example. I am not holding myself up as the greatest example, but it is an accessible example
Mm,
of something that anybody at any university could do.
mm,
So one of the things that we do want to teach is critical literacy around AI,
yeah,
and a way to stop people from just doing their assignments over
yeah,
ChatGPT.
yeah. Wow. Talking about critical thinking, Rachel, as we in the next decade or in the next 5 years, maybe, what kind of careers do you think will value critical thinking, expressive skills, or adaptability over technical degrees? Yes. Now that I see a lot of like Australian universities, they are collaborating with Indian universities. Um, so, is it still fine for an Indian student to think about going to Australia and studying in Australia, or they can get the same experience through the campuses that are being, getting set up in India as well? Still, if someone wants to go to Australia, what
Yes.
are the because you've seen both the worlds, you have experience with the Indian culture as well as the Australian culture. So if an Indian student is planning to go to Australia, what are the three things that they need to keep in mind?
Okay, number one, call me. If you call me,
Yes,
call me.
Rachel, I've seen, like, I've met a lot of Australians even in India. So I'm calling you from New Delhi, and I've met a lot of people in Delhi as well, like Australians, and they love Bollywood. Why do they have this, like, immense soft corner for Bollywood? What is that they are so attracted towards? Hi, everyone. Welcome to TEDucate, your go to podcast for exploring higher education like a pro. I'm your host, Anvesha, and this week I have with me an educator, community arts practitioner, and academic who has dedicated her career to reimagining how we teach, learn, and create. Raised in an Indian Australian household, she brings a unique cross cultural perspective to education, blending arts, identity, and inclusivity in powerful ways. Let's welcome Dr. Rachael Jacobs, who's a senior lecturer in creative arts education at Western Sydney University. Hi, Rachel. Thank you so much for accepting my request and being a part of this podcast. We are going to have some really interesting and the fascinating theme for this, episode is education through expression. So I'm looking forward to it, and I'm having a big smile right now on my face because the topic itself is so interesting, and we have with us the expert. So she's going to take us through the journey. You are going to take us through the journey. So welcome to my podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It is such a pleasure to be here. I'm coming to you from Gadigal land in the Eora Nation, which is my way of doing a land acknowledgement that I'm here on Aboriginal land. That's the unceded name for Sydney in Australia. So it's so wonderful to be connecting with you and the listeners from all over the world.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Rachel. So, like we had discussed, the first segment is going to be about your childhood. And I could see through my research that you had a very interesting childhood. So, you have been, raised in a very culturally diverse, Indian as well as Australian household. And, before moving to Australia, of course. So, how was your childhood? And how was your like early experience as in childhood education and your views on identity and education?
It's such a great question because I think identity has sort of defined my experience, and there'd be many other people who are like me, trans. I think might be one of the terms, or diverse or multicultural in their upbringing. So many of your listeners will have this experience, and you might have this experience yourself. But I was born into an Indian family. My parents are from India. My dad was born in Chittagong, and my mother's from Lucknow. And they were born a very long time ago. Please don't tell them I told you, but in the 1930s and 1940s. So my parents are a little bit older.
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about this, their story, we're starting pre-independence and we're starting pre-partition. We're starting the story, pre-World War II, that kind of thing. So when I think about the wisdom that I've been infused in over the decades of their life, it's just really quite incredible. The world that they came into is unrecognizable from the world that we live in today. The fact that you and I are speaking here
Yeah.
over Zoom and looking at each other, I think this is beyond some of their wildest dreams. So my parents migrated to Australia in
Mm-hmm.
the 1960s, and it was like for them, it there is an analogy. It was like landing on the moon. So leaving 1960s India and arriving in Australia was like a different planet. And they actually arrived in Australia on the day of the moon landing. So it's a
Okay.
beautiful story. They talk about the first time they saw a television, there was a man walking on the moon. So that to me just represents new frontiers and people in search of new worlds and off into the unknown. And it's captured a spirit of bravery for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's captured a tenacity, captured a desire to want great things for yourself and your family. And I really have tried to capture a lot of that bravery in my life as well. So they grew, they start in Australian life, and then my brother and I were born in Papua New Guinea. So
Wow.
Papua New Guinea was part of Australia
Yeah.
for quite a while.
Yeah.
And during the 1970s, my parents were working for the Australian government in Papua New Guinea, and that's where I was born. I moved back to Australia pretty much since, a few months after birth. And
Mm-hmm.
so I've lived all my life in Sydney and Australia. I have moved to many different parts of Australia, including Canberra, including Meanjin, which is the name for Brisbane. And now I'm back here in the hometown where I grew up. So it was definitely was a very multicultural
Yeah.
upbringing, living
Yeah.
between these two worlds, between Australia and India. But
Mm-hmm.
I think, as you know, the Indian diaspora in Australia is very large.
Right.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and relationships between Indians and Australians, while complex, I think is
Mm-hmm.
is very strong.
Yes, yes, of course. These days it's growing stronger because we're having a lot of like Australian universities. They're actually
That's it.
yeah, right, collaboration with Indian universities, and they're also setting up campuses in India. So it's growing stronger day by day. But Rachel, what language did your parents speak in at home?
Well,
Yeah.
my parents are Anglo-Indian, so we are from that diaspora, but also my parents do, speak some different languages as well. My mother speaks Hindi, and my father speaks Bengali, and so English was, the natural common ground for them at home. So
Right.
English was our first language growing up. Of course, they studied Sanskrit at school, like everyone has to, and yeah, and so it is a very linguistically rich family that I came into. But here's part of the conundrum they faced when they arrived in Australia. It
Mhm.
was the 1960s, and the policy of Australia at the time was assimilation. Assimilation meaning that everybody comes together,
Yeah.
but they adopt an Australian way of life. That they adopt Australian Western, Anglo culture.
Mhm.
And so they were told you should not be speaking your language, you should adopt Australian values, the Australian way of life, you should wear Western clothing, you should eat our food, and things like that. We
Okay.
now know that approach to be profoundly mistaken, that you are able to integrate your own culture with the land, with the land that you have chosen to live in. You are able to do those things. But my parents thought that that was the right advice at the time. They
Mhm.
thought, okay, our children are going to be Australian, and so we will bring them up very Australian. And we will not speak any language. There's now a huge gap in my life. I'm actually learning Hindi at the moment. So that I can recapture some
Yes.
of the parts of my heritage that are really important to me. And linguistic diversity is so important, and being able to speak multiple languages is such a gift in this world. It's a
Yeah.
gift that we as Australians are not very good at as
Mhm.
Anglophones. So it's, I think, something that I really feel I missed out on was the gift of speaking multiple languages.
Right, right. Rachel, in one of your LinkedIn posts, I remember, you spoke about this particular activity. The resulting outcome was not as per what you had planned. And I remember you spoke about how it resulted in a collage which still hangs over your desk. And it talks about how the quest for peace and hope is messy and chaotically collaborative. What did you mean by that? Would you talk about that activity?
Oh, I wish I was so pleased that you saw that because
Yeah.
that was
Because I
very
took a
vulnerable.
pause. I took a pause, and there were also few of the experiences that I had in my childhood that also emphasized the power of collaborative learning. Even when
Yeah.
things are so imperfect, you just have to find that perfectness in that particular situation. So please talk about that activity, and also if you had, any experiences in your childhood that made you feel the power of collaborative learning.
Oh, I love this question because that piece that you're referring to is a collage, and I'll
Yeah.
give your audience a little visual. It's in the shape of a butterfly,
Right.
and it's really messy. Like if
Mhm.
you looked at it, you would think, what kind of artwork is this and who did it? Because I
Okay.
don't know what this,
I've seen.
what,
I'll make
what's
sure. Yeah, I'll show it to the audience. I'll
Oh,
edit it. Yeah.
fantastic. Fantastic. There's quite a strong story behind it. So I teach at Western Sydney University. I'm incredibly lucky to
Yeah.
teach in one of the most culturally and linguistically diverse universities in Australia, and indeed they claim the world. And so I was teaching a subject, it's called applied imagination. Applied imagination is really whatever you imagine it to be. It's part philosophy.
Mhm.
It's part the philosophy of imagination and creativity. It is a little bit artistic about arts practice. It is a little bit about learning and pedagogy, the science of how you learn. And it's mostly social ecology, which is the ecology of how we live together and how we collaborate with each other and how we learn by
Mhm.
being together rather than siloing off into our own individual worlds. So that's applied imagination.
Mhm.
And it is for people who are working at the moment who would like to do their masters. And so, because people are working, they come to two residential sessions. And this was the second residential session. I'd met everybody before. We'd bonded, we'd made beautiful art together, and now we came back. And I walked in and I had all my materials with me, and I had my poetry, and I had my music, and things like that. And I said, "Welcome back, everyone. How are we feeling today?" And suddenly it started. Suddenly people started sharing what was in their heart, which was very heavy.
Yeah.
Some people started crying. Some people started sharing. I'm actually feeling very emotional thinking about it now.
Mhm.
Some people started saying that they were feeling hopeless, that they were feeling lost, because it was the day after the massacre in Christchurch, where a man opened fire in a mosque. And if you remember that particular story, it was an
Yeah.
Australian man who did that horrific action in Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Mhm.
And we had some students who were Maori themselves
Mhm.
in the course, and there were, of course, many Australians, but people from, with heritage from all over the world. And we were sat together and we're talking about it, and we're talking about how could anybody do this? We talked about the phenomenon of Islamophobia
Mhm.
and how horrific that is in society.
Yeah.
And from a place, both Aotearoa, New Zealand and Australia that pride themselves on being multicultural, how did that happen? And we were trying to come to terms to this and about something so horrific in our community. And I put down the art materials on the you know, on the desk. And I just gave people magazines and things like that. And I said, maybe if you find a picture or a phrase that encapsulates some of what you're feeling right now, we can just stick it down on this piece of cardboard. And people started to capture words like hatred and despair and isolation But also they captured words like resistance, and they found words like together, togetherness, or they found words like healing. And we decided to make a butterfly. And in this part of the butterfly, half of the butterfly would be one half of the butterfly that is so damaged, but the other half to be the butterfly that we would like to see, the butterfly that is beautiful and flourishing and encapsulates all the parts of the world that we would like to see. It was a very hopeful butterfly. Now, when you look at the butterfly itself, because everybody was talking and it was very unconscious art making, we were not looking at where we were sticking anything. We were just slamming things down on the paper. It's like a big mess, but if closely, you'll find words of hope. You'll find people writing their hopes for the world, people writing um, that they would like their communities to be resilient, that they would like everyone to look after each other, that they would like everyone to be caring of minorities, that they'd like a world free of racism. So if you look closely at this artwork, there's so much beauty in it. But if you look at it from far away, it just looks like everybody's
Yeah.
thoughts together, you know.
Yeah.
And,
Mm.
nobody in the room, would define themselves as an artist, but we made something beautiful and artistic. So that's the little story of the sometimes lessons don't go as you planned, and that you do need to be responsive to the people in the room. And if some tragedy has just happened, such as that one, we have to look inside our hearts together in order to get to the next stage, rather than saying, actually, on the page it says at 9:30 p.m. I need to be doing this. Sometimes we need to put our tools down and say, what do you need right now in
Yeah.
order for
Yeah.
us to work together?
Mhm.
And that is, yeah, sometimes we just need to go off script a bit.
Yeah, and I'm 100% sure each and every participant would have felt so liberating after that activity. They would have just put their heart out, and I could see that in that collage, which of course I'll make sure that I show it to the audience.
Oh, thank
Moving
you.
on to the next question, Rachel. I mean, I'm sure you're aware of how the Indian education system works. I mean, it's too much focused on rote learning and standardized examinations. Would you like to highlight some of the, a few global practices that are popular and also relevant in today's time that can be incorporated into the Indian education system just to make it more creative?
One of the things that puzzles me, and I'm not an expert on the Indian education system, but
Mhm.
is that India is firstly one of the most innovative and creative places on earth.
Yeah,
When I look at what's happening in the tech industry, when I look at what's happening in innovation spaces, the advances that are being made in science, along with this incredible, rich, artistic, cultural
yeah,
history. I
yeah.
just think, I just think India's unstoppable. And you mentioned earlier that
Hmm.
Australian universities are starting to
Yes.
plant campuses. So the world is taking notice of
Yeah.
India's innovation and their creativity and their expanse for imagination. The world is taking notice.
Yeah.
If the education system could mirror that, it would be absolutely unstoppable. And I think my
Yeah.
message is that there are a number of places in the world that have gone down the track of embracing creativity and abandoning things like rote learning and everybody learning the same thing and
Yeah.
standardized testing.
Yeah.
And they are really flourishing. So, in the most recent PISA, the international tests, PISA had its first international test of creativity, and Singapore came at the top. It doesn't mean it's the most creative place on earth. But what it does mean is their education system is they are putting energy into fostering creativity. They're putting energy on people being collaborative, being critical thinkers, being highly creative, crafting work together, doing tasks that are open-ended, that do not have a right or wrong answer, asking people to form opinions and asking people to create something new and novel and interesting,
Yeah.
asking people to express themselves and emote. And those kinds of ways of thinking, I see those deeply embedded into Indian society. I
Yeah.
would love the education system to reflect that. I would absolutely think that's amazing. So, and then on the other hand, we have other places that have gone down the path of rote learning,
Mhm.
exams, standardized tests, and those are places such as the UK and the USA.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, Australia as well is going down this path, not to the extent of those other countries.
Mhm.
And those countries are really struggling. They're really struggling with an innovation agenda. So I think at the moment we are in a fork in the road
Mhm.
where we can, with our schools, we can take either a more creative, and critically minded, imaginative, and innovative path, or we can do very outdated modes of thinking that don't really suit our world today.
Right. Rachel, we were talking a lot about creativity. Like, I have also learned Odissi and Bharatnatyam dance, but unfortunately, yes,
Oh.
unfortunately, I could not pursue it as a career because that's also an issue in India. Because parents, they want children to focus more on job-oriented courses or education, so that they can get a good job for themselves and also a good livelihood. What advice would you have for those parents?
Well, first and foremost, I'm right beside you because I'm speaking to my parents as well, who
Mhm.
asked me if I'd like to be an engineer. No.
Yeah, yeah,
If I'd like to be a doctor.
yeah,
I can't stand blood. I don't know what gave them this idea, but
yeah,
it was
yeah.
definitely, and I understand as well. You know,
Mhm.
my parents grew up in a very different world than I did,
Yeah,
and they wanted for their children the shortest path to social acceleration, which looks to them like being an engineer or a doctor.
yeah.
Um, I wanted to be an actor, and I love that you had Bharatanatyam training. I
Mhm.
wanted to be a dancer as well, and those things are
Yeah.
not on the list for a good Indian girl.
True,
So,
true.
but
Yeah.
I think there's a couple of different parts to this answer. So firstly is let's look at the world that we have now and let's look at the flourishing of AI. Our world is changing dramatically now. It's going to change so dramatically in the next few years.
Mhm.
Suddenly, if you have an artistic skill, if you are able to think of something that nobody else has thought at before, if your child is good at telling jokes, if your child is good at writing poetry, suddenly these skills are going to be the new capital in this world, is
Yeah.
artistic and creative thinking. Suddenly, the Bharatanatyam dancers who are well skilled in technique, but are able to think broadly about creating new spaces and choreographies and things like that. This is going to be the new currency of our world. So I think if you have a child who thinks outside of the box, that is a gift, and it should be you should be encouraged. So I will say that the new skills of this world are going to be entirely creative. And so that's where we should definitely be putting our energies into. If you have something new to offer, that needs to be praised and flourished.
Yeah.
And art is going to be part of that world. And I understand, after my parents went through what they went through,
Mhm.
in their life, and their daughter turns around and says, I want to be an actor. And not just any actor, a community theatre actor. They
Wow.
would have thought, what have I
Yeah.
done? Why would you take such a risk when you consider what we have done for you in your life? Why would you choose a
Yeah.
path that is
Yeah.
so risky? But now we know that with risk comes great reward. So I've pursued a very creative life, and it's paid off very well for me. I employ so many other people as part of my work. So I just want to encourage a little bit of bravery
Yeah.
amongst our parents, but also a little bit of bravery amongst our children. If I had said to my parents, okay, I'll
Mhm.
go and be an accountant, I might have made them happy for a short time,
Yeah.
but I would have made myself very unhappy in the process. And in the long run, they see I'm happy and they are happy as well. So just a little bit of bravery for our kids as well.
Yeah, and that we also see later in the life, Rachel, that a lot of people get frustrated with their jobs and, they get into depression. And we also have seen the great resignation era, wherein a lot of people, just resigned from the job just because they were not happy. So,
That's right.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
right. And also, when people retire, they say, now I can do the things I want to do.
yeah,
I can write that book. I
yeah.
can write my poetry. I can do dancing. I can go to a singing class. I can take up that
So,
instrument. And all of that time that was just waiting for you. So yeah, so maybe we should sort of do it all a bit backwards.
absolutely. Rachel, you spoke about AI in your response, right? It's the new buzzword these days, right? AI is everywhere. How do you think AI is going to impact creativity and emotional intelligence in students?
It's hard to say. I'm not an AI expert, so it's very difficult to say. I do think at the moment, my concern about AI is that firstly we're at the start of this journey.
Mhm.
So it's like logging onto the internet for the first time. You go, oh wow, there's not really a lot there. That
Yeah,
is going to
yeah,
change. That's going to change radically.
yeah.
So I think it is going to impact creative industries.
Mhm.
And at the moment, I've listened to things like compositions. I'm also a musician myself. I've listened to things like compositions that AI makes, and you think, oh, it sounds fine, it sounds nice. But at the moment, the compositions lack the complexity that a human's able to create.
Yeah.
There's lots of examples, like here are two artworks. Which one did AI make, and things like that.
Mhm.
AI only makes what it only can use knowledge that's already available. Whereas art and creativity, you are making something that has never been created before.
Yeah.
So that's a huge oversimplification. So I think if we stay strong in practicing our creative skills, we are always going to be the innovators. We're always going to be able to use AI as this wonderful tool in
Yeah.
order to create our art or our work or to be creative and innovative. If we keep exercising that muscle, which means right from when we're very young, we need to keep doing creative activities. That's the way we're going to be better as become stronger as creative beings. So creativity is like a muscle. The more you work it, the stronger that it gets. So if
Yeah.
I can encourage everybody to be able, you will know the best way to use IT if you
Mhm.
have the skills yourself in order to innovate.
Right. Yeah. Rachel, time and again, you have emphasized the importance of education through expression, even in your LinkedIn posts. What do you mean by that? What is education through expression? And then I'll ask you the second part of the question.
Oh, yes, please. I'd also love to know a little bit about your education experience because you've already
Mhm.
mentioned,
Yeah,
it's been
yeah,
mentioned the arts, and now you're doing this amazing, medium to communicate with
yes,
people. I
yes.
think education through expression means that the human is at the center, is
Mhm.
that we bring our full selves into whatever learning space we're in, be it a dance class or a classroom or an outdoor education center. The whole person or the whole child is really important. And that means that their history and everything that their parents have brought with them and their families and things like that is really crucially important to their education. The knowledge that they developed at home should be valued. It means that we should honor their histories and their culture. We should also be respectful of how they're feeling that day, of what disposition they're in and things like that. Now, I'm not talking about I don't feel like working today, therefore it's not like that. It is about looking at the whole child and their whole situation or the whole human and saying, I'd like you to express yourself in this. I'd like you to bring your whole self. So I'm going to teach you some base level skills, but I'd
Okay.
like you to layer your own experience on top of that. Tell me how this speaks to you. And I think this is where the most fun parts of education happens is when you're able to give your students some new skills and say, but I'd like you to do this around something that that you connect to. You use some of your own life experience to tell us a story, because everybody's an expert in their own story. You may not be the expert in the room, but you are an expert in your own story.
Mhm.
So being allowed to express that story, I think, is part of self-realization, understanding ourselves so that we can understand our place in the world.
I'm sure racial education through expression would be helping a lot of students build identity and resilience. I mean, this, I think this response would also be applicable to Indian students who go to study abroad to different countries and they are navigating different societal and cultural experiences. So would you like to tell, I mean, how does education through expression help build resilience and identity?
No problem. I think this happens a lot in
Hmm.
Western classrooms when people come, for you use the example of an Indian student traveling abroad.
Yeah.
And we say, I value every student's perspective, but often we
Hmm.
do try to stuff people into a box,
Yeah.
this is the way that we do things,
Yeah.
and this is the way that we like things done. This is a particularly an issue in Australia with our Indigenous students, our First Nations students, and
Hmm.
valuing their culture and background, not trying to make them like us. That's, where we have gone profoundly wrong. So I think it's really important to say, today, this is what we're learning.
Hmm.
Can you tell us a little bit, why don't we talk a little bit about how this is done in your home culture? Or tell us a little bit about how you were to interpret this, or what values do you bring to, this thing that we're learning about here? Because we can learn so much by sharing that intercultural understanding. We're going to be learning so much rather than if I stand at the front of the room and say, well, this is the way it's done. This is the way we do it here. We're going to learn so much more if we learn about how how things are done all over the world.
Yeah, true. Um, Rachel, my next question was because I was also thinking about how we were discussing these dance forms, Odissi and Bharatnatyam, and I just wish every day and every time I wish, I would have had a career in Odissi dance or Bharatnatyam dance, something like that. I'm so creatively inclined. So that also makes me think,
It's not
and
too
it's not too
late.
late. I'm still practicing. I'm
Oh,
also
are
there on
you? Oh, very good.
yes. There's a social media platform, and I do keep practicing every day and post it on social media as well.
I
Because
will follow you.
sure, I'll let you know my handle. Of course, let's follow each other on Instagram as well. So I'm just also thinking and kept wondering if someday we could also blend. Courses like music, art, theater into like traditional and conventional courses like science and technology. How do you think that blend would work? And how to take it forward with respect to Indian colleges and universities?
I actually think this is the way forward, particularly if you have an institution or if you have a person or something like that who
Hmm.
says, I don't know, I don't know about all this art stuff, I don't know about creativity. I actually think this might be a preferred approach, is
Yeah,
to blend the arts and sciences together
yeah.
and to find new meanings with each other. Now, it can be as simple as we're teaching an aspect of science. We might be teaching about life cycles, or we might be teaching about, some aspect of biology. And we say, can we just take a moment
Hmm.
to stop and appreciate the incredible beauty that we have here in front of us with this insect or with this landscape or something like that, and then examine, how that was formed and things like that, and examine some of the role of beauty in our world. I definitely think this is a very good entry point,
Yeah,
a
yeah.
very, very good entry point for people. One
Mm.
of the areas in which I work is in climate justice, in addressing climate change
Wow.
here in Australia. Yeah,
Yeah.
and one of the
We
problems
need
is
it in India as well. Yeah.
oh, and all over the
There's
world.
there's a lot of like changes in the weather and the climate, and we could just see it. We can experience it over the past few years, and I think it's high time we address those challenges. But yeah, please go ahead.
Absolutely. And the weather will become more erratic.
Yes,
And
yes.
we know the sea levels are rising, and we
Yeah,
know that it will affect some people it will affect the most vulnerable people first. And
yeah,
that definitely, hits people in India really hard as well.
yeah.
Um, I think one of the problems that we have in Australia is the science of climate change. We have explained it all through the science. We've invested hard in the science and we've talked numbers and we've said it will be this many degrees of warming and it will have these effects and things like that. And suddenly some people have come to the point where we've explained the science and they've said, I don't agree with you. And we're at a dead end with climate denialism and things like that. Then we have two groups of people going up against each other and they're not communicating. They're just fighting. They're just going like this. When approached through art,
Mhm.
it's a totally new way of seeing the world. Once you feel something, you can't unfeel it. Once you know it in your heart or in your body, you
Yeah.
can't unknow that.
Yeah.
And so I've been working through drama and through dancing and things like that, and having a look at some of the ways that the earth is damaged, having
Mhm.
a look at life from the perspective of animals and having a look at life from the perspective of some of the most vulnerable people, and even from, plant life and trees. And I've had people say to me, they've said, I have never seen the world from that perspective before. And they've said, once I was in that position when my land was being ravaged, they said, I wanted to scream. They
Mhm.
said, I've never felt like that before. And now I understand why we need to protect the world. Um, and it was just, a real moment of awakening through people through art. And I could have sat there for an hour and given them a lecture
Mhm.
on why we need to protect our biodiversity and things like that. And they would have sat there and gone, yes, I understand. But once you feel it inside
Yeah.
yourself,
Yeah.
you'll
True.
never be the same. And so that's why I'd really love everybody to think about where arts and sciences, can hold hands, where we can go side by side to
Mhm.
make sure that we're using this part, the head, but also the heart, so that we're informing our whole selves in order to be a better society.
Mhm. Wow, so true and so well articulated, Rachel. Thank you so much for those insights. Rachel, we were discussing AI, and most of the people feel that, AI can only be used by people who come from a technical background. But when I use AI, I feel there's also a lot to do with creativity and out-of-box thinking in order to even give a command to AI. So my question to you is, what sort of ethical and emotional boundaries should students keep in mind while using AI? Because they're too dependent these days, and for each and every small thing they are using AI. So when it comes to students, what sort of ethical and emotional boundaries they need to keep in their mind? Because we don't have a policy in place yet for AI.
That's true, and I think
Yeah.
this is largely where we're going to be making it up as we go,
Yes.
as we go,
Yeah.
as we
Yeah.
go along. I
Yeah.
think that with students and young people, the first thing is to teach them integrity.
Yeah.
Is to teach them integrity away from a computer, is to
True.
teach them integrity, yeah, and pride
Yeah.
in their work and
Mhm.
things like that. And how to be honest with yourself so that when you look at the page or you look at the artwork or you look at whatever was created, in collaboration with AI, you can step back and say, was this my work?
Yeah.
Is this
Yeah.
something, are these my ideas that are here on the page? Or
Mhm.
was I deeply assisted by a machine and I have no claim to this? So
Yeah.
if we teach them integrity as people, I think those values will carry through. The other thing with AI is I think my concern is the way that I'm going to maybe go a little bit off topic here.
Mhm.
But maybe, the technology that we're developing, I'm concerned that we're using AI to do things like create artworks and poetry and
Yeah.
things like I
Yeah.
want I want the robot to do the washing up for me. So I don't have to, that's what I want.
Yeah.
I want them to fold the ironing. That's the
Absolutely
thing.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to do the artwork.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want and
Yeah.
so, but what that means is, I recently went on a tour of a factory
Mhm.
and they were showing me, here are some of the jobs that we get people to do and things like that. And here are, some of the places where we can innovate and things like that. And I say, so that thing over there, that they're doing, I was like, that could be replaced by a robot. It's very repetitive and, This
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah,
require a lot of skill. And they said, yes, it could, but the human is cheaper.
yeah.
So here we are. If we don't talk about wages and valuing human work and valuing human dignity, if we
Mm,
keep dropping human wages and things like that, then yes, we are going to be taken out by AI, and I am going to be left folding my washing when I want to be creating
yeah.
art. That's it.
True,
That's
true.
while the robot creates music for me, which is I want it the other way around. So just, that was an aside to say we've got to protect the human in this, which is always workers' rights, which is always the dignity of the individual, giving everyone a dignified job. So we'll always come back to those principles. So with that goes integrity. So to teach our children ethics at a young age, to teach
Mhm.
them honesty, this is how we're going to navigate this world.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure, Rachel, you must have worked with a lot of universities. And have you seen in universities how AI these days are integrated into the higher education system? Maybe we can have a few good examples for Indian colleges and universities in here, as in a better way or a good way to blend AI into higher education system. That would be like, valuable for the students.
There's such great examples going on at the moment. So one of the things that I do, this
Mm,
is not a great example. I am not holding myself up as the greatest example, but it is an accessible example
mm,
of something that anybody at any university could do. So
mm.
one of the things that we do want to teach is critical literacy around AI,
Yeah,
and a way to stop people from just doing their assignments over
yeah,
ChatGPT.
yeah.
Yeah, so one of the things that my students are asked to do is create some lesson plans in regards to creativity, like drama lesson plans or some dance lesson plans and things like that, so that I can see how they're thinking through their planning. My students are going to be teachers in the future, so I ask them to think through that. And so in class, what we do is very simple, is I say, now why don't we ask AI to do one for us? And everyone's like, "Oh, are you going to do it?" Yeah, yes, I'm going
Oh,
to do it in front of the class. Let's ask
yeah.
AI to do this assignment for us. And I say, okay, there we go. Yeah, ChatGPT has given us a nice drama lesson plan. Let's deconstruct it together. And we go through and we say, okay, so the first part of the lesson wasn't very good, was it? No, they didn't ask, enough background information, did they? And then they look at they're like, the first warm up was pretty good. Okay, so AI got that one right. That was good. And one student says, but I would actually do that sitting in a circle because I think that it'd be better if students could all see each other. And someone else goes, yeah, I agree. I actually think they should be standing up though in a circle rather than sitting down. And now we are collaboratively planning this amazing lesson together. So that's just one example is look at what AI is spitting out at the moment and deconstruct it and say, everyone, what do you think? Can we do better? So that's probably the easiest example that I can think of.
Mm,
Some other really good examples that I have seen is people who are using AI as a starting point, asking AI to bring together some information
okay.
and then saying, okay, this is what AI has gathered. Say we're doing, we've asked it to get some historical information. It's
Mm,
gathered it. And now we're going to say to students, I'd like you to tell us what comes next. What is the unknown piece? So if you're writing a script, what happens next in the story here, or something like that. So say if we were putting together some factual historical information, we would bring that together and we'd say, now I'd like you to write, a first person story about that. So kind of the background information has been done and we can get to the more critical part of the thinking together. So that's just one example. There's some beautiful examples happening, in the technology space, some really good things happening in the science space, which is not my space as well. And it will continue to get better. It will absolutely continue to get better. But I think is bringing those together, those threads of information, and say, and what can we learn from this? But what comes next is how we can use it.
but how do we know, Rachel, that that information is not biased? I mean, especially from the context of history. Like, I don't know if there's a chat GPT. Of course, there would be chat GPT in Pakistan, and we talk about partition, there would be like a different version. I'm 100% sure about it. There would be a different version in India. So, did you ever come
Absolutely.
across something like that?
That is a really good point. So often in my all my spare time,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes what I do
Yeah.
is I put things into AI that I know are incorrect. I say, you write me a paragraph denying climate change. And the AI will come back at me, depending on which one you use,
Yeah.
and say, no, because there's all this evidence about it, and you
Mm-hmm.
should go and do some research. And I was like, okay, so a robot's now telling me to do my own research. How interesting. However, those safeguards
Uh,
won't always be there.
yeah.
So this goes back to, again, teaching critical literacy at a young age. And now, and let's talk about AI images. I
Yeah.
had the experience that many people in the world did, just last week, where I watched bunnies jumping on a trampoline, and I
Mm-hmm.
thought, isn't that cute? And they were not real.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so, so
My God.
again,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, they were not. So
True.
teaching everybody criticality,
Yeah.
to question everything is a core skill, is now the most fundamental skill. The best way it has been described to me, or the best way I've arrived at is, do you know April Fool's Day?
Yeah.
April 1st, every year. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of companies do for social media, they do a little joke about, we've decided, one plane has been like, we've decided there's,
Yeah.
a new section of the plane only for children. And, we've put, trampolines in there and things like that. And just so everybody can laugh and things like that. And you look at it at first and think, oh, how strange. And then you think, no, it's April Fool's Day.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now every day is April Fool's Day. Every day you
Wow.
have to, yes,
Wow.
every day you have to apply your critical
Yeah.
thinking and go, is that true? Or
True.
could this be biased?
Yeah.
Could this be somebody's agenda? Where was it made? Who made it and for
Yeah.
what purpose? That critical thinking has to be taught at a young age for us to be able to navigate this world.
Wow. Talking about critical thinking, Rachel, as we in the next decade or in the next 5 years, maybe, what kind of careers do you think will value critical thinking, expressive skills, or adaptability over technical degrees?
I am hoping that
Mhm.
people are going to love things that are real people showing their realness. Be that somebody who is doing Bharatanatyam dancing in front
Yeah.
of you, or somebody who's doing, a comedy gig or reciting slam poetry, or somebody who is, doing live cartooning at a conference,
Mhm.
somebody who is showing ingenuity, but in real time, somebody who is being vulnerable. I would really like to think that somewhere along the line, we start electing politicians who are genuine and who
Yeah.
are vulnerable and who are people of integrity. And we start going, no, that is where I want to place my energy. These are the leaders that I want to follow. I
Yeah.
think there's going to be truth in activism, is that people are going to start saying, no, I want a better world. And that's why I'm going to be inspired by people like Malala and Greta Thunberg, people who have realness. I
Yeah.
think that is going to be the new currency of our world, so that we do an utter rejection of narratives that are damaging, of jobs that are exploitative, and we say what we want is realness and kindness, and that is where we're going to place our energy. That's where I'm going to invest my money. That's where I'm going to invest my time. That's what I would like my child to be doing, is something with realness, kindness, vulnerability.
I didn't have this question here, Rachel, but while I was discussing with you, it just popped up in my head. Now that I see a lot of like Australian universities, they are collaborating with Indian universities. Um, So, is it still fine for an Indian student to think about going to Australia and studying in Australia, or they can get the same experience through the campuses that are being, getting set up in India as well? They can have the same experience, or something else that they need to look forward to when they go to Australia?
This is such a
Yeah.
good question, which I think about really often. And there's
Mhm.
a few things that I want to be, really, really quite raw about. Is first and foremost the reason that Australian universities have huge interests in India and China is because of the money that it brings in. There is always an aim to be closer to Asia, to have closer ties with our, with countries that we have a relationship with and things like that. That there's such a large Indian diaspora in Australia. Yes, 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 yes. That is all there and it is important.
Mhm.
But the cynical part of me looks at this and says that they have realized that India and China is a huge market, and other places as well. That's not just
Yeah.
confined to those.
Yeah.
That other places as well is a huge market and they want to get their foot in. So
Mhm.
first and foremost, I would look at what they are offering and
Okay.
I'd say, is this the best thing for me? Okay, is this something that's going to be valuable for me? And the other thing is that I think the experience of being an international student in Australia can be a wonderful experience. It can also be very isolating. There are really wonderful communities of international students here, but it can be a lonely experience. Australia is very different to India. A lot of people come here and say everything shuts really early. It's kind of boring. There's no sense of community. And that is true of a lot of Western societies. So maybe you might have a better experience if you are among your community, and, being at Australian university in India. At the same time, if you would like to go and see new frontiers and, get to know different parts of the world,
Mhm.
then by all means, the international student experience is one that if you're able to manage it, I also know the fees are very high and things like that, so it's not for everybody.
Mhm.
But if you're able to have that experience, that can be absolutely life-changing. So I think what I would like for my Indian brothers and sisters and for everyone all over the world is
Yeah.
to critically look at what is being offered to you and think, is this the best thing for me?
Yeah.
Okay, are my interests at heart here? Is this going to be something that it feels positive and fills a gap in my life? And if the answer is yes, then by all means go for it, whether it's in India or whether it's in Australia. I think it's really wonderful that there are more opportunities that are available people closer to home. I
Mhm.
would like to think that the only option for you is not, the only option for people is not to have to leave their home and their family like my parents did. I really love that there are more opportunities all over the world. But just remember, everybody has an interest. And
Yeah.
increasingly, everyone has an interest in India. And I
Mhm.
want to make sure that interest is genuine and meaningful.
Wow. Wow. Rachel, but still, if someone wants to go to Australia, what
Yes.
are the th because you've seen both the worlds, you have experience with the Indian culture as well as the Australian culture. So if an Indian student is planning to go to Australia, what are the three things that they need to keep in mind?
Okay, number one, call me. If you call me,
Yes.
call me.
I'll have
Look,
your number here.
yes, yeah.
Yes.
I run a dance school
Okay.
in Australia,
Mhm.
which is a very big part of my community is and my artistic practice. I run a Bollywood dance school, and
Wow.
we have we do, yes, yes. So I am a Bollywood dancer, and I have a Bollywood dance school, and we have people who come from all over the world who
Mhm.
are looking for their community, who they're looking for their people.
Mhm.
Dancing is definitely part of it, but they're looking to connect with people. So I would say find somewhere where you can connect with people. That might be a dance class, it might be a sport team, it might be a cooking space, it might be a book club, it might be something, but find something away from your studies where you can form connections with people and try to have a combination of experiences where you connect with people who are international students as well or travelers, but also Australians as well. Because something that's commonly said to me is some people said, I'm an international student and all my friends leave. At some stage, they all have to go back home and they say, I'm still lonely here. So try to find something where you can connect with a community of people,
Mm-hmm.
and that will help you to feel more settled and more like more less isolated. The next thing I would say is do some learning and get to know our incredible Indigenous culture that we have here in Australia. It's something that not a lot of people know about when they arrive. It's definitely something that a lot of Australians don't know about. But in Australia, we have the oldest continuing culture in the world. It is absolutely incredible. It is a lesson to us in resistance and resilience. It's a lesson to us in culture and history. It's a lesson to us in terms of family and community. We are so blessed here. So do what you can do to learn about First Nations Australian and understand the land that you are on, because you're on sacred land and
Yeah.
that deserves respect. Um, so that would be the second thing. Um, and the third thing is a lot of people have a lot of ideas about Australia before they arrive. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of things in the media that, some are true, some are not true, and things like that, is to just take it on face value, kind of have no expectations before you arrive.
Mm-hmm.
Australian culture is very interesting. It's in some ways very quiet. It is very reserved. People are not very expressive. In some ways, a lot of people don't talk to each other on the street and things like that, and it takes some getting used to. So a lot of people look at, images of Australia and they're like beaches, sunshine, friendly people all the time. It takes time. It takes time to get to know people and know a place. So, kind of come here without expectations and see if it is something that, that suits you and something that where you're able to fit in.
Okay. Moving from our topic a bit, Rachel, I've met a lot of Australians even in India. So I'm calling you from New Delhi, and I've met a lot of people in Delhi as well, like Australians, and they love Bollywood. Why do they have this, immense soft corner for Bollywood? What is that they're so attracted to it?
Why is it so engaging?
Yeah.
I think I think it is so engaging because of these days,
Hmm.
the need for a happy ending.
Yeah.
That these days there is so much despair in the world.
Yeah.
There is so much of life that looks hopeless. There is so much of, from wars and famines and genocide to the rise of fascism, and people are looking for something beautiful and something hopeful. And when you have something that is reliably gorgeous,
Yeah.
that is trustworthy in that you will feel joy, that you will feel all the emotions in there, that you will laugh, you will cry, it's very attractive. It's
Yeah.
very, it's fantastical.
Yeah.
And, I come back to that's where Bollywood was born out of, is a need to lift people out of where they are and take them into a fantasy world and go into a place where that is so beautiful that is almost unimaginable. It's almost not real. And I think that that's where people are coming to Bollywood to say, I want something that is just undeniably beautiful,
Yeah.
that I can feel good at the end of it, that I can feel hope again in the world, that I can feel, yeah, that I can feel something. I just think also the art direction. I
Mhm.
I think that we need to take a moment to recognize the brilliant artists that are involved in Bollywood movies, be it art directors, choreographers, set directors. It is quite incredible what the kind of art that they create that goes beyond the storyline or beyond the songs and things like that.
Yeah, getting back to our topic. So Rachel, we were discussing how each and everything, there's so much of developments happening in every part of the world. And people every day are talking about AI and other innovations, and students feel so overwhelmed. They just feel that, they are not prepared for what's coming next, or, they are not prepared for the jobs of the future. So, what's like the first thing that they need to do when they feel so overwhelmed by the future, by the uncertain future that we are heading towards?
For me, I would say step away from the screen is is turn off the screen, put your phone down, step away from the computer and go back to your body.
Mhm.
Go back and dance or sing or create an artwork or draw or meditate or stretch even, but go back to you.
Mhm.
Um, and I think this is where it does feel overwhelming when we're bombarded by screens. And by the way, I'm not opposed to screens. I've got my own TikTok account. It's terrible. Don't follow me.
I
I'm on
will.
Instagram.
Oh, that's banned in India. I can't.
Oh yeah, of course, of course. There you go. Well, you're not missing anything. Mine's terrible. I've got my own Instagram, so I'm not anti-screen, but I do think this is where it can feel overwhelming, where it can feel hard to switch off all of the voices that are now coming from around the world, and it is relentless. And particularly for young people, it is absolutely relentless as they carve out their identity online while finding their identity in the real world as well. So I think step away from the screen
Mhm.
and go and make something for yourself. Go and be and sit with yourself and see how that feels. Spend time with other people in real time. Go and dance with somebody, go out to, even if you're going out to a club or going out to a dance class or something like that. Do
Yeah.
some drama, make some theatre together, tell a story, sit with a child and read them a story from a book. Pick up a picture book and read it to yourself and think, what is this speaking to me? If we can come back to some of those ways of understanding the world, I think when we go back to the screens, we'll have more skills to be able to navigate that.
Yeah, you spoke about spending time with oneself, Rachel, in order to understand, your strengths and weaknesses as well. Because I do this activity at times. I spend quality time with myself in order to understand my strengths and weaknesses and who am I. You just ask few questions and to understand myself in a better way. Would you like to talk about some of the other activities that you do, some interesting activity in order to know oneself better?
Well,
Because
I'll
I'm
tell you
getting
about,
lost in the crowd. So I just want to
yeah,
know, even
yeah.
for myself, I want to follow those activities. So for students especially, what are some of like activities that they can do in order to understand themselves better?
Oh, that's a really good question. One of the things that I have done,
Hmm.
and quite recently in my life, is I started aerial arts. So, do you know what aerial arts are? It's where there's an apparatus hanging from the ceiling and you learn to do tricks. So, it's very similar to gymnastics or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
My art form is called Lyra, and that's a hoop that's suspended from the ceiling, and you do tricks in it. Another one is called silks that I do. Another one's called aerial hammock, so it's a piece of material suspended from the ceiling, and you do tricks.
Hmm.
And so I started this when I was 40. I
Okay.
started this most definitely, I started as an adult, and it was terrifying. It was absolutely terrifying. I'd never done anything like that before. I was not strong at all. I was scared of everything. Was scared of the heights. I was scared of, everything hurt, but I loved it because I had to be present. I had to be present in the moment. And being an academic, you're often asked to be an expert. It's predicated on you knowing things,
Mm.
is that you're an expert in your field. Whereas when you're at aerials, you're so vulnerable. You have to do things in a particular way, or you could die, you could fall and die. And so it was really great to have a space where I was vulnerable, where I was not perfect. I could not be perfect. I could not be the expert. I had to be a learner. So for me, it was aerial arts, but go and do something that you're bad at. I know to people that's just
Yeah.
going to say, why would I do that? Why would I do something I'm bad at? So you can be vulnerable. So you can accept that you are not the expert, accept that you're not the smartest person in the room, accept that you're not the strongest person in the room, accept that you're not the best at everything, and come to terms with that. And you'll see yourself in a different way. That was really, really great for me. I also, when I'm hanging from the ceiling
Yeah.
and for
Yeah.
my life, I don't think about anything else except in that moment, I am so present. So it's also a good lesson to be present.
Okay, Rachel, that brings us to the rapid fire round, which is, you know what a rapid fire round is, right? I ask you these wall
I
of
do.
questions. Yes.
Yeah.
And whatever first comes to your
And I'll be
mind.
quick. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, here we go. Dance or drama? If you could only teach one forever.
Dance. I'm sorry, theater people. It's dance. It's dance. Rhythm. The rhythm of my heart lives within me, and I,
Absolutely.
I
And
can
all the
never.
Indian students, whoever they're, if they're planning to go Australia and they want to be connected with the community and they want to learn Bollywood dance, then they know who to get in touch with. Yes. Okay, an Indian dish you absolutely love. Do you?
There's so many. Where do I start? Um, Bujia.
Biryani?
Yes.
Bhujia. Bhujia. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
My mum's specifically,
okay.
aloo and
Aloo
pea,
bhujia. Okay.
potato and pea. Yeah, aloo bhujia. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Nice. Okay. One book that changed how you viewed education. Any book that you want to recommend?
Whale Rider, which is also a movie, and it's a Maori story
Okay.
it's a Maori story about them choosing a new leader in the community. And it made me understand Indigenous cultures a lot more. It made me understand family culture. It made me understand a little bit. It has a little bit of Maori language, and I'm not connected with this culture at all. But it also made me understand that the way that we educate people in a Western frame is taking them out of their family context, and is taking them away from their community. What we actually need to be doing is plugging into the amazing wisdom that families and communities have.
Wow. Wow. First performance memory as a child? Do you remember your first performance? I do
Yes,
remember my first
I
performance.
do. I
Yes.
do.
So please share your experience.
So my family's Catholic,
Okay.
and yeah, my family is Catholic. So we did the Nativity. So the Nativity is a performance of the birth of baby Jesus in the stable that churches do at Christmas time, and I was in the Nativity. My church must have been coming to terms with Multicultural Australia because I have no idea why, but I had to put on a sari and hold a cricket ball and say, "Rubber from India. This is a ball for him to play with when he gets a little older." And then sit down. There were no Indian people at the birth of Jesus Christ. There were, I was like, what are we doing here? But I believe it was my church's attempt to be inclusive in the 1980s. And it was really cute. And I got to wear a sari and a really tiny, teeny, tiny sari for the first time ever. And it's the first line I ever learnt. This was like the first time I had to learn my lines, and I practiced and practiced and practiced.
And how old were you? When
I think I was 3.
oh my God. I remember when I was 4 and I gave my first performance. So I remember I danced on Tandav, which is like a,
Oh,
you know, Tandav, right?
yeah.
And Lord Shiva. And after that performance, there was this question answer round. So they asked me, who's the Lord of Dance in India? Of course. And I performed Tandav, right? I should know it's Lord Natraj because that is how we start the ritual before performing in front of anyone. I completely forgot. I just became blank on stage. I was so petrified. Everyone was, cheering in the crowd. They were saying the name loud out, but I still couldn't say anything. Yes,
Oh, and you just had a mind blank.
absolutely. That also. I thought there's a technical glitch. No, there isn't. Yes. How do we
Oh,
deal with stage fright, Rachel? How do we do that?
will I still get stage fright?
Mhm.
I still get stage fright, and so you need to, yeah, if you have somebody, a young person who's about to go on stage, obviously preparation is key. Practice, practice, practice. It's really good discipline for everybody.
Mhm.
But say somebody just before the performance is absolutely freaking out, just
Yeah.
get them to sit down and breathe, and they have to name things that they can see. So you say, I can see a yellow ball. I can see a green curtain. I can see a black phone. It just brings you back to the present moment. So doing that, yeah.
Ah, wow. Okay. A classroom moment that still gives you goosebumps? Is there a classroom moment you remember?
Yeah, I'm so blessed because my life is full of classroom moments. But
Mhm.
when I left my first school, and the first school that I taught at was, yeah, a beautiful, beautiful school, but with a very mixed bag of students, and some students who you never thought that you might get through to and things like that. And it was one of the hardest jobs I've ever had. Still one of the best jobs, probably the best job I've done in my entire life. And when I left after 4 years, because I was moving to Canberra, a student said to me, I'm the person that I am because of you.
Wow.
And you don't get that in every job.
No.
And that was somebody who I didn't know that I'd connected with. I didn't know that they'd connected with the subject area. I didn't know that they had connected with school at all. But when somebody says to you, I'm the person I am because of you, it is an unforgettable experience. And my next experience teaching at the private girls' school was amazing, but there was something missing. There was a hole in my heart because there were while they were incredible students, they didn't need me in the same way that I was needed in that first school. So it's just something to reflect on. Sometimes the hardest jobs that you do are the ones that will have the most meaning to you.
Uh, okay. More important for today's learner, creativity or AI fluency?
Creativity!
I knew that.
Rising.
Okay, and this also I know, but let's see. Your go-to stress buster after a long academic week.
My go-to stress buster is going to be a combination of things. So
Mhm.
it's going to be either chocolate, or it's going to be a bundle of puris, which is like carbs and oil together. Just
Thought there would be some blend of Bollywood thing into your response.
No, 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 there's more. There's more. There's more.
Yeah, yeah,
There's more.
yeah.
So sitting down with that in front of YouTube and just binging Bollywood videos, not the whole
Yeah.
movie, just videos back to back,
Mhm.
and looking at the choreography and thinking, oh, I can do that. I can do that. By the way, I can't. Those dancers are incredible.
Yes, they
But just
are.
watching them and thinking, oh, I can do that with my dance school. We can do that. So I think that's my stress buster is yeah, a
Which
nice
is
big.
your favorite Bollywood film? Like in something that you've watched in the recent time?
Oh, favorite recent film, or
Yeah.
just favorite altogether?
Let's go with a favorite film, all-time favorite film.
Okay, don't judge me.
No, I won't because I myself am a huge Bollywood buff, so I won't at all. You can.
Okay, everyone judges me. I think Three Idiots is a great
That's
film.
a good one. Yeah.
I think it's
I
everyone's
have
like,
a few terrible ones.
oh, do you? Everyone's like, that's a terrible film. I'm like, I think it's hilarious.
No, that's
And I showed my partner. He's like, what is this?
no one's gonna judge you on that, but I
Thank
have a
you.
few terrible ones. I do get
Okay,
judged a
tell
lot,
me.
but I just love
Yeah.
Bollywood.
Okay,
Oh,
I do too. I do want to do a little shout out at
yeah.
Triple R.
Mhm.
RRR, I think is
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
recent and really well done. So
Yeah.
for people who a lot of people say I've never watched a Bollywood film,
Mhm.
I think that's a recent film that's a really good start.
Yeah.
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 True. Okay. If you could redesign one part of the global education system, what it would be, if you had.
What I would redesign the assessment system.
Yeah.
And my PhD was in assessment. So
Hmm.
I'm actually, yeah, I was actually not in Bollywood dancing, or my PhD was not
Yeah.
in an art form. It was in assessment. But
Hmm.
I think unfortunately the world that we've created, assessment drives learning. And
Yeah.
so if we could recreate assessment so that people are judged on the beautiful things that they create and their creative thinking rather than, did you get it right?
Yeah.
Did you tell me the answer that I wanted? Did you regurgitate a fact to me? You know, if we could redesign away from rote learning
Yeah.
into what are you capable of, then we would be setting students up to think about the stars.
True. Yeah, absolutely. One thing Indian students have that the world could learn from.
Um, it's very hard for me to generalize about about all Indian students, particularly because
Mm-hmm.
I'm so far away from India.
Yeah.
But I want to say respect for diversity. So I understand that things are changing, and you know the world is changing and things like that. But India is the most unbelievably diverse society. And the India that I went to visit to when I was young, there were people of different religions, different language groups living next to each other in each other's houses, in each other's friendship groups, playing sport together, you know, things like that. And you didn't even stop to think about diversity. Whereas in a lot of Western cultures, we have to consciously make an effort to be diverse. And that's not to say that India is devoid of prejudice and racism. We know that's not correct.
Yeah.
But it is so organic in India. It's so organic that people don't even really need to, you know, you don't need to stop and examine that. So that's one of many, many things. I would also say tenacious. I would also say tenacious and,
Yeah.
you know, yeah, the hard work, the uncompromising hard work, the values, the respect. You know, there's so much that we have to learn, but I actually really want to fall back on diversity.
Yeah, true. I also think Indian students are so adaptable because, like you said, India itself is so diverse. I mean, we have so many languages and culture. So it doesn't take them so much of pain when they go to study abroad because they've already experienced it in India. So that's
It's
also,
so true.
yeah, yeah.
True. And there's a phrase called code switching, you know, code
Mhm.
switching, which is where you adapt yourself to every
Yeah.
situation. It's
Mhm.
adaptability.
Mhm.
Indian students are just, you know, they know that to aunties, you know,
Mhm.
this is the level of respect that you would afford.
Yeah.
But if you were with, you know, if you were with somebody who is younger and a boss and things like that, you would expect
Mhm.
it to be very dynamic, you know.
Yeah.
So they know how to do this incredible code switching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True. True.
Yeah.
That brings us to the end of the episode, Rachel. Thank you so much for your insights, and also thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank
How
you
did
for
you
having
like the
me.
whole experience?
I loved it. I could talk to you forever.
Then
And now,
we can have a separate episode altogether on Bollywood films, actors, actresses, dance. I think that would also be quite interesting for the audience.
gossip, we can, yeah, talk
Gossip,
about
yes.
who's seen who and, you know, things like that. Thank you so much. It was wonderful, wonderful,
Same,
wonderful talking to
same
you.
here, Rachel. And to all my viewers, this is your host, Anvesha, signing off from TEDucate, where we decode education, careers, and everything in between. Thank you so much, Rachel, and thank you so much, everyone.